Hello, I am Super Dude, and I am back once again with something a little different to my norm, stepping away from the video game sphere to talk about animation. A form of storytelling I've always been fascinated in from childhood to now. I'm not sure why this was the case, but I was never really comfortable with shows that featured real people in them. No Sesame Street, no Drake and Josh, no Destroy, Build, Okay, that one was a little bit fun. For me, from a very young age, it has been animation all the way. Growing up in the middle of the forest, there weren't a lot of options in terms of kids programming, so we made sure to be up bright and early on the weekend for those mind-blowing weekend cartoons, since they were such a luxury. But we weren't waking up early for Dragon Tales or Between the Lions. No, we were going for the big-ticket items. Sonic X, Kirby right back at ya, my particular brand of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, whatever my sister was watching, and a couple of shows that would haunt me years later when I would see Sailor Moon and realize, oh, it's like that Mew Mew show. Because it turns out, there's a name for that sort of show. This was my first encounter with something that would be with me for the rest of my life, anime. I was barely out of my diapers when I first started watching Saturday morning cartoons on Foxbox, later named 4Kids.tv because the .com boom was happening. I didn't know what anime was, I just watched cartoons, you know? It was only later in life, around late middle school, that I was reintroduced to the supergenre, with the likes of Full Metal Alchemist, the original to be clear, not Brotherhood, Sergeant Frog for some reason, and Ouran High School Host Club. I honestly couldn't ask for a better reintroduction for where I was in my life. Full Metal and its brother series, pun intended, are some of the best anime to ever exist and really shows some of the strengths of this form. The other two shows show a different aspect of anime, which was its sense of humor. Sergeant Frog's English dub changes things aggressively to make it a lot kookier, and Ouran is similarly goofy with a style of humor which you would not find in similarly aged shows for kids in America. But it's important to remember, I was watching it in English, so this is still a style of humor filtered through an American lens. Don't lose track of that. It gave me a good grasp of both the ambitions of anime and its creature comforts, as well as how it's Americanized. What I wouldn't learn for a few more years is anime has another side to it that I've never quite gelled with. But we'll get back to that topic much later. So all of that happened around 13 or 14 for me. I am now 26, and I've been on again, off again with anime for most of my life. But recently I started getting real deep into it, because there's just so much to see. There are a lot of great anime, of various genres, animation styles, and story quality. It really is a super genre of its own. So what exactly is it about anime that I want to talk about? The deep, dark worlds of Berserk or Beastars? No. The political drama and interesting commentary about dogmatic pursuit of science? No. How about one of the most enjoyable coming-of-age stories I've seen in my entire— No, damn it, I want to talk about falling in love! Remember earlier when I said these three bad boys are the first anime since childhood that I saw? Well, this one had a pretty significant impact on me. Though y'all wouldn't know it, I am a hopeless romantic. A well-constructed romance side plot? Star-crossed lovers? Unrequited they were just about to tell or did tell but the other person didn't hear? Gets me every time. I've been watching shows like Ouran for a while now, and there's just something about them that I can't help but love. It's my trash, is what I'm saying. All the things I will talk about today are romances, but specifically romantic comedies. There are a boatload of romantic comedies actually, and it seems like new ones are coming out every season. But why romantic comedy? Why so many of these and not full-throated romance animes? To illustrate this point, I'd like to compare the concept of the romantic comedy to Rick and Morty. Stay with me here, I promise I have a point. Don't turn it off. Rick and Morty is a deeply sardonic show that revels in the dark humor about humans, the universe, all of it. Everyone's gonna die, and we're all just bags of meat, and love is just a chemical in the bag telling you to reproduce, nothing's real, blah 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 blah. That's what it's saying with its words, but that's not all the show is. As much as it wants to convince you otherwise, Rick and Morty is also a rather sincere show, with characters having heartfelt moments of great sadness, joy, love, and care for each other. But wait a minute, this feels a lot like sincerity, and if we're sincere all the time, that will clash with my ironic detachment, Rick would say, and also some people in the crowd. So we gotta do some comedy, gotta have the comedy to mix it up. Romantic comedy is much the same. Falling in love, confessing, and every moment in between is a very sincere emotion, and can be quite embarrassing to feel or experience, so sandwiching those romantic moments in humor makes it more palatable for the squeamish. Make no mistake though, the comedy is in service of the sincerity. That's why we're here. The highest rated episode of Rick and Morty is still the Rick Lantis mix-up from season 3, a full episode of world building, pulling on loose threads, and sincerity. There's barely a joke in this episode, and even the true jokey jokes are more thinkers that aren't meant to make you laugh so much as go, oh. Romantic comedies as well, we want to see the cuties being cute together, but the funny brings our guard down so we can appreciate the reason we're all really here. So yeah, long story short, Rick and Morty is exactly like romantic comedy. I will not listen to anyone's clapbacks. For this video, I started out kind of just wanting to talk about my favorite rom-com, but there is a trend that I and others have noticed over the last several years, linked to the original AniTubers that pointed this out to me, that I've been thinking about a lot lately. Y'all may have noticed that I am a man, and clearly that means I'm a bit of a weird sell for rom-coms, but recently, some rom-coms have started adding more, let's say, boyish elements to its plots to draw in a more masculine audience. I will discuss these shows on a spectrum, walking from female-oriented to fully male-oriented, and discuss how these intended demographics influence the show or manga and shape the rom-com as it progresses. This is the gentrification of anime rom-coms, an examination through consumption of this trend, and my feelings on it. Now, to start with a disclaimer, pretty much every single series I'm about to mention in this video is published in male-oriented magazines. Shonen or seinen are mangas targeted towards boys and young men respectively, whereas shoujo and josei are manga targeted towards girls and young women respectively. This is kind of the end-all be-all for what genre a manga or its corresponding anime is considered in. If it came from the corresponding book, it's in that genre grouping, no matter the conceivable overlap. This is our first step towards understanding this shift. From the jump, all of these shows are created with boys somewhere in the demographic picture. So let's go further back in time to a show not meant to cater to their sensibilities, starting with my OG, Ouran High School Host Club. Hereafter abbreviated to just Ouran because OHSHC is a mouthful and I almost messed it up just saying it just now. Ouran centers Haruhi Fujioka, an exceptionally smart high school bootstrapper who pulled so hard on those damn things they managed to make it into Ouran Academy, a school for the super rich and beautiful, as coined by one of the members of the titular host club. Haruhi, in trying to find a quiet place to study, accidentally makes their way into the host club, breaks a vase worth many times their yearly allowance, and enters indentured servitude in an attempt to pay it off. Over the course of the first episode, the boys of the host club, and you, if you're attentive, discover that Haruhi is in fact a girl, and then the show gets on with earnest. The particular type of show this is a satirical reverse harem rom-com. It is satirical in that at some point over the show's run, it will get around to making fun of as many of the tropes found within the rom-com genre as possible, even some of the grosser ones. Reverse harem is a gender-flipped harem anime, where instead of the anime being a bunch of girls that are for some reason really obsessed with this one dude, at the same time, it is a bunch of dudes fawning over a single lady. This allows Ouran to cover the most ground when making fun of as many types of character stereotype as possible, with Haruhi herself being a super interesting case as far as feminine leads go. For one, she's not terribly feminine. Her rather androgynous looks allow her to work as one of the hosts, but this work arrangement also fits in with her feelings on the matter.
Listen, Senpai, I don't really care whether you guys recognize me as a boy or a girl. In my opinion, it's more important for a person to be recognized for who they are rather than for what sex they are.
Haruhi is an exceptionally genderqueer character, all the way back in 2006. And while not everything about its representation has aged well, it was very ahead of its time in terms of genderqueer expression. As the show progresses, the one-note personalities of the boys expands until each character has more expansive motivations and character traits. So by the end of the show, we have characters genuinely butting heads over minutiae of their characters that simply did not exist in the beginning. By the wrap of the season, there was no concrete romance, but a great list of episodes with heartfelt moments, some sentimental, and some romantic, pointing towards relationships that may be possible in the future. And then no season 2. And I dare say there never will be. Which honestly may be the reason why the show has maintained a following all these years later. Do you want Haruhi to get with tall blonde man? How about mischievous red-haired man? How about the walking bag or any of the other less plausible answers? You could theorize about this forever if you want, though the manga did finish and therefore there is a definitive answer if you want to look it up. Though this is obviously very comedic in comparison to a lot of the classics of the period, it still exhibits a lot of the common notes of feminine rom-coms. A flirtation with romance, but nothing really set in stone. The one-note characters developing complexity as the show progresses. The hug or indirect kiss that acts as our romantic climax, and the lack of more seasons are all hallmarks of the original shoujo run of anime rom-coms. To put it short and sweet, this show is great, and everyone should watch it, obviously. Now on to the next show on the list, Kaguya-Sama Love is War, written by Aka Akasaka, animated by A1 Pictures, and the reason why this video exists. Kaguya-Sama centers both of our prospective paramours as main characters, Kaguya Shinomiya and Miyuki Shirogane, as they attempt to court the other. Their method of courtship, however, isn't a particularly sane one. Before we even see the main characters of our tale, the narrator established the terms of the war the title references. Whoever gives their heart first will be conquered. To confess is to lose, therefore, a confession must be coaxed from the other to win. That is the framing for most of the show's standard conflicts. There will be some inciting incident, then the narrator interjects to act as referee, explaining the terms of the game and how to win. Then the battle commences, with the narrator marking moments like an announcer before declaring the results at the end of the match. Who are our fighters? Kaguya is an heiress to a very successful business conglomerate and is therefore exceptionally trained in order to take over that empire, both in terms of business and manipulation, as well as more well-rounded pursuits such as music and art. She has the pedigree, but she also works hard to live up to the name. Miyuki is no pushover himself, being a transfer student that is both #1 in the school's exams and president of said school, despite being an outsider. He demonstrates exceptional intelligence, charisma, and work ethic by immediately arriving and placing himself on top of the school hierarchy, both in academics and administration. These are the rival intelligences that are pitted against each other episode over episode, and is the source from which the comedy flows. At first, only one other character exists between these two, and that's Chika Fujiwara. Chika is naive and pure of heart, leading her to assume the best in everyone and say exactly what she means with no hint of malice nor double entendre, which serves as a chaos element to their well-placed manipulations and wildly throw things out of whack. This is the formula for a while, until more and more characters are introduced, spinning their own side narratives, sometimes their own love stories, and introducing even further chaos into the mix. Let's consider for a moment the balance of romance to comedy in any of these rom-coms. The further we lean in comedy, the less meat the plot will really have, but the more romantic, the greater the risk that we frighten those that fear sincerity. Kaguya starts as all goofs, but builds towards romance like a pressure cooker as we continue through the show's run, with episode 3 giving us our first genuine romantic moment as Kaguya takes the day to walk to school, but finds herself getting late because she doesn't actually know the way, and gets rushed to school by an also late Shirogane, leading to this moment on the bike. The pressure continues to rise season over season until we reach episodes with no jokes, all drama, all romance. It's like it cashes in on those jokes to provide episodes of full romantic or dramatic context, further developing the mindsets of our protagonists or the characterization of the rest of the cast. The main character of this tale is obviously Kaguya, it's in the name, but we get such insight to Miyuki's thoughts that we aren't made a stranger to his thought process either. They're both written in ways that are conceivable for their ages and also considers their gender dynamics. Spoilers for an early conflict in Season 1 upcoming, Kaguya is sick and bedridden, and Shirogane draws the short straw for going to drop off her homework at her house. Kaguya's maid and mischievous imp Hayasaka engineers a trap for Shirogane that leads to the two leads sleeping together. Literally sleeping, mind you, nothing sexual happens in the slightest. This is the catalyst for our first real conflict. Not our playful love battles from before, they're mad at each other. And for different reasons. Kaguya feels she was taken advantage of since she was loopy from being sick, and is at once disgusted by the possibility of what he did, but also upset if he didn't do anything. She likes him, so she wants to seem alluring, but also not in those circumstances, so she both wants his attention and is disgusted by the possibility of her garnering that attention in that situation. Shirogane, by contrast, is aware of the trap he was placed in and thinks he was very upstanding. He did nothing sexual that night. He did not take advantage of Kaguya in any way. If anything, he should be commended for his restraint. So why all this hostility? Both characters coming from understandable stances, especially for their ages. I mean, there are flaws in both of these logics, clearly. And once you understand their viewpoints, they make sense in a way, which I feel is a particular strength of the writer. This brings us to the first method that modern rom-coms use to put masculine butts in seats, the shift of POV, mostly to the male perspective. Picture, if you will, your classic shoujo romance. Dainty little lady lead, likely with some bad boy of sorts as the masculine counterpart. A lot of the story is spent with the feminine lead wondering what the guy is thinking. Why does he sometimes spurn her affection and other times embrace it? What's his deal? These stories lean on the lack of interior voice from the masculine lead to feed that mystery, but that rarely happens in Love is War. Shirogane's interior voice is known and his perspective is often shared with us, so we have a perfect view of the battlefield. Again, this show still leans more towards Kaguya's POV than Shirogane's, given the multiple mysteries where if Shirogane is wondering what Kaguya is feeling, it's a joke, whereas the other way around, it's treated as a genuine mystery to her, and to us. But this is the start of a shift that we will see taken to further extremes in later animes. time and again we are shown the diagonal perspectives of our characters, how they reach similar conclusions from different beginnings or different conclusions from the same start based on their upbringings and backstories. Which includes the central question: why are they doing this? Why are they fighting this stupid war of love anyway? The narrator gave us a reason of sorts, but that isn't their personal reasons. That's just the framing we, the audience, needed to understand the stakes and start the story. When we finally get their personal reasons for this, we find those reasons to be baked deep into their respective histories, gender dynamics, social standings, work ethic, and personal self-worth to create dynamic positions from dynamic characters. That initial reason for Kaguya's anger, the paradoxical, I don't want him to touch me, but I also want him to want to touch me, is itself a nuanced position, which is interesting for a character to hold. Kaguya and Miyuki are very dense characters and are both given equal attention, so we see the two grow into more multifaceted and interesting characters. But it doesn't just stop with these two. More characters are revealed, which all see a little development of their own as well, eventually leading to a forever more fractalizing cast of people who each have loads of nuance to their positions and understandings of the world and each other. Kaguya-Sama Love is War is a super engaging rom-com which continually develops its characters as it progresses, continually developing your understanding of the game they play and their own positions on love and confession. Also, without getting into specifics, the Kaguya movie, The First Kiss That Never Ends, represents a paradigm shift that basically means we're entering an entirely different show with the next season, whenever that happens. A new perspective that you rarely see in romance fiction, so it's a great time to watch the previous seasons to catch up. Though I am not certain, I feel like the movie is such a turning point that we will someday consider the story of Love is War as a pre-Christmas and post-Christmas sort of deal. So it's kind of the perfect time to begin. All the setup without the need to wait. And no, I haven't read the manga. My fiancé doesn't like me to look ahead, so to speak, so I'm trapped here with her. So that's Kaguya. My favorite anime rom-com, and the most accommodating to both sides of the false gender binary. Still very consumable for girls, but with some added dimension and perspective for Miyuki, giving more for men to identify with. I guess also the inclusion of boob jokes, but we'll get back to that. Komi Can't Communicate is a slice-of-life romantic comedy written by Tomohito Oda and adapted to anime by OLM. Komi CC centers Hitohito Tadano, a perfectly average guy who just wants to make it through high school without making waves. Definitely not based on any past drama. Though the show won't comment on this, his wallflower nature gives him fantastic observational skills, which are put to the test when he meets Komi. Komi is a nonverbal autistic... Komi is a bombshell who basically sweeps everyone off their feet and immediately gains the respect and adoration of everyone she meets without saying a word. But that's the thing. She has such a powerful shyness that she is incapable of speaking to anyone, even indirectly, and misunderstands this adoration as they're mocking her disability. Tadano notices this, and through the first episode, they devise a communication method that allows Komi to get her words across, through writing. She tells Tadano that her wish is to overcome this disability and make 100 friends, a goal which Tadano admires and sets out to help her complete. Antics and hijinks commence when they realize the school is filled with exceptional weirdos, which serves as the basis for most of the slice of life stuff. This is high comedy, low romance, a light romp with loads of goofs. So light, in fact, that one of the common criticisms of the show is just how long it takes for the plot to go anywhere. Just letting you know that up front. The romance is background radiation to the comedy, okay? Regardless of all of that, I found the show to be fun, the animation crisp and clean, and Komi herself to be an interesting person. This is a character with a disability, and while it is definitely the source of many a joke in the show, being basically the origin point of most of the comedy, I don't personally feel it as a punchdown, so to speak. Her struggles are understandable to anyone suffering from social anxiety, and her friends try their best to understand her and help her to come out of their shells in their own ways. Tadano through complete support and baby steps, Najimi by throwing her into chaos for their own amusement, and the side characters through being themselves and giving Komi space to be herself as well. I know that's just my personal take on the disability question. That's gonna be different from person to person, but I think the show does a good job representing Komi's autism as just an aspect of her that she lives with. She wants to improve socially so she can feel comfortable around those she likes, but no one judges and in fact adores her for who she is regardless of this. And I know pretty much all of that grace exists because she's the hottest girl in school, but this is wish fulfillment anime, so things are gonna be idealized, that's just gonna happen, I'm sorry. Speaking of wish fulfillment, one of the major elements of boy-oriented romances is that wish fulfillment factor. I mean, all romance fiction is wish fulfillment of a sort. Most people on the planet are chasing that feeling. Shout out to the aromantics who broke free the cycle. Perhaps it's because this wish fulfillment is pointed at me that I notice it more, but it feels like it's more prominent in masculine media, and one of the ways it manifests is in the portrayal of the main character. Tadano is a parody of the audience stand-in. Scamboli Reviews is a video about Monster Musume that does a perfect job pointing us out for that series. Monster's main character is so empty and only performs the most good-natured and banal actions that he could honestly just be brainless, like a cup. He exists for you to pour yourself into him and watch the events of Monster Musume as if you were the one in the driver's seat. Which it's fine, I guess. I mean, it's hentai. We all know it's hentai. Like, you turn it on and you know what it is, so it's fine. It might as well be honest. Tadano's version of this trope intentionally draws attention to itself, pointing out how he's quite literally the perfect average in everything he does. His name is a play on the Japanese phrase for just a guy, and his entire design. Moments where he's brought into contrast with Komi shows how ridiculous he is. Later episodes also show us why Tadano is this perfectly average character, which is a no-no if you want him to be a good stand-in. It's like Byleth from Fire Emblem Three Houses. They're an audience stand-in character as well, but because it keeps drawing attention to itself, it turns out the narrative is doing something a little bit different than just wanting you to fill up their void.
Why did I say it like that?
For Byleth, I won't say what that is, but for Tadano, it's because it is a joke. He is an average caricature filling the role of audience stand-in with his tongue firmly in cheek. It is still a wish fulfillment anime though. He does still have the attention of the hottest girl in school, though that's probably earned through spending significant time learning about each other and assisting Komi with her disability. Time spent together. The way love tends to form. I don't know, I personally love the way this show portrays the romance here, even if it's very scant. There are some other aspects of Komi CC that I don't like. This show has a yandere in it, and she sucks. A lot. She gets less suck as the show progresses, but she's given a lot of screen time, so I can understand if that's a deal breaker for you. Overall though, an easy watch that seeks to poke fun at some of anime rom-com's creature comforts while being a genuinely good show, if chronically slow. 5 out of 7, moving on. For the final anime, I must warn you, I wasn't really a fan. If anything I've spoken about thus far grabbed your attention, please go see it for yourself. They're all great in their own ways, and while the same is true for the next show, its central problem I find much more grating. I say problem in quotes because, well, it's more of a me problem than a technical issue. The final anime of the day is My Dress Up Darling, a slice-of-life rom-com from early 2022 written by Shinichi Fukuda and animated by Cloverworks. So far on this channel, I've never really done what I'd call a full-blown review of anything, because I'm trying to tease out your interest in the topic and hopefully convince you to experience that piece of media for yourself. But that's because I've always liked what I was talking about in some capacity. This will be a bit different. A genuine review to accurately share how the show sat with me, because that's the only fair way to talk about something that you didn't like. This anime has a lot of excellent qualities to it, and a lot of stuff that I also didn't enjoy throughout its run, so just like with anything else, if this sounds good, even the stuff I hated, go check it for yourself. It's just my taste, and everyone has a different one. My Dress Up Darling is about Wakana Gojo, a first-year high school student whose sole ambition is to craft Hina dolls, which are dolls used for the Shinto holiday of Hina Matsuri. He greatly looks up to his grandfather and his craft, to an obsessive degree, but is a bit too hard on himself, so his own work suffers as a result. For now, he just crafts the clothing for the dolls to contribute in any way he can to his grandfather's work, but even here he pushes too hard. Outside of his craft, he's reserved, traditional in dress and decorum, and due to some past traumas, shares none of his passions with others. Sharply contrasting with the show's cover character, Marin Kitagawa, a bubbly, poppy, outgoing girl in fashionable dress, someone who always speaks their mind and hides none of their passions, one of the most popular girls in school and everyone wants to date her, blah blah blah, you know the type. Keep Komi in mind when we discuss this show, because where Komi lampshades a lot of its male stand-in wish fulfillment plot, Dress Up will do it earnestly. Anyway, Marin demonstrates the gulf of personality between herself and our lead when they both happen upon the home ec room, and she discovers his passion/obsession with Hina dolls, and accepts it heartily. In fact, she goes so far as to show something she's passionate about with him as well, cosplay, though she's terrible at it, which is where Gojo comes in. With his wealth of tailoring experience and his meticulous nature, he could make a cosplay far better than anything she could come up with. So she asks for his help, and he accepts, thus thrusting the show into action. So let's start with the good. Dress Up has fantastic art, both in still and in motion. You could tell a lot of care went into this show. I've seen rumors that Cloverworks wasn't prepared for the success of this show, but with how much detail work went into this, I don't know, it just seems like something you had to know that this was gonna be big. Like, look at this art. Look at the amount of frames in Gojo's movement. The same holds true for Marin, but we'll get back to this. Dress Up is very good with setup and payoff. If there's a loose thread, it will be pulled in 2 episodes' time or so. Quick spoilers for the first romantic development in the show, skip ahead to here if you want to miss it. In episode 3, Gojo explains that he does not say anything is beautiful or pretty unless it comes from the heart. Cut to episode 5, where he starts dozing off after a long day of work, and in his drowsiness, he calls Marin beautiful. And she makes the connection. She recognizes the work he put into this for her, the passion, and she completely falls for him. And that's to say nothing of the other gun they place on the mantle in episode 3. The plot is tight, and you can guarantee screen time is being used effectively to set up something later or explore the topic at hand. Speaking of the topic, Dress Up has complete reverence for cosplay as a craft and passion. From taking time to discuss actually important points on making effective cosplays, to the multiple instances throughout the show's run where characters give their reasoning for wanting to embody certain characters, or the appreciation of the work Gojo does to make their cosplays a reality. Episode 9 is a particular standout here, and is the highlight of the series for me as a result, though that may be because of how much I identify with this little one. I've always wanted to cosplay a particular character from a certain Pope Steam catalog, but I've never had the skills nor the confidence to try it out. This character spoke to why I wanted to do that, my concerns with not doing it, but they pushed through that feeling to actually do it, unlike myself. This episode was tailor-made to me up. My Dress Up Darling is fundamentally a show about passion. And when it is speaking to those passions, both through the myriad cosplay characters and Gojo's Hina doll passion obsession, you could see that love and care. To say nothing of the show's focus on helping others, Gojo is shy, Marin is a terrible seamstress, but they cover for each other's weaknesses and encourage each other to become better. Marin is super excited to contribute in whatever way she can, and loves when she gets to be useful in the later cosplays, which helps Gojo put into perspective his own feelings about helping his grandfather with his work, which is a lesson he passes on to the younger cosplayer he meets later. These messages run through the entirety of the show, and is a lot of the reason why I continue to enjoy it through the cruft. But the show is last on the list because, as I said, this is the strongest presentation of masculine romance we've seen so far. So let me demonstrate. The point of view is fully male in this show. Though we do sometimes get Marin's internal voice, the things she's saying with that internal voice are gooey, gushy, head over ears, oh my gosh, I love him, I love him, I love him sort of stuff. This girl is powerfully smitten for Gojo. And why is that? Gojo is another audience surrogate, but not one that draws attention to himself like Tadano. A comfortable one. He has very few identifying features. This mole, and his height I guess, though most guys are taller than most girls, so that's not a standout feature. His eyes and hair have no color to them, they're just blank. And that includes up here. Gojo has 2 memories that happened outside of the show's run to call back to. His adoration of his grandfather's Hina dolls, and that one time a girl called him a creep for liking those dolls. If anything bad happens, he'll link it to the mean girl memory. If he's trying to connect with someone else or do something nice, he'll think about the Hina dolls. He's basically an empty husk filled with only Hina doll thoughts, and his horizons are greatly expanded by Marin's meddling. He finds the more he works on her cosplays, the better his face work gets on Hina dolls, which is another important art lesson. If you want to get better at something, it pays to immerse yourself in other disciplines, or simply take a break to enjoy other things. But this leaves him empty, ready to be filled with Marin's otaku interests, or your own thoughts. I couldn't help but draw a comparison between his obsession with Hina dolls and how some people make anime their whole personality. Just take that, replace it with this, and he becomes actual humans I've known. The third and final way the show makes itself more boy-oriented is its interest in the female form. You see, a long time ago now, I told you there was this aspect of anime that I've never gotten along with, and that is anime's propensity for being horny as hell. The final trick up a rom-com's sleeves to bring men to the table is number 3. Tits. When I was a young man, I noticed that punch animes tend to have a lot of random horniness sprinkled into them for humor or to titillate the audience. I was never sure why that was the case. On Japanese forums, they took to calling this fanservice, and the term has become widespread in the decades since. If you want to learn more about the topic, Lextorius has a history of fanservice video, which is really great. Outside of the Japanese context, this term tends to mean cute nods to lore or characters outside of the focus of this story. Marvel movies are an excellent example of this. They're riddled with fan service. For Japan, fan service means something included in the fiction that is intended to please the audience, and really only for that reason. It's not in service to the plot. In fact, it may even be detrimental to the story being told. It's for you alone, buddy boy. For a non-Japanese example, the Citadel DLC for Mass Effect 3 is riddled with fan service, with characters taking on different personalities and humorous plots that are more in line with fan works of the characters than their typical in-game writing. Take the squad mates you love, dress them up, play with them like dolls. This form of fan service is typically sexual in nature, though the previous example shows this isn't a requirement. And I am not a fan. There are many reasons why I, a rural-born American, might have issues with this, but I could tell you where it started was watching Sergeant Frog and coming across an episode where the mom and the daughter imply they're gonna do sexy time with these two aliens before kicking their asses because of plot stuff they learned earlier. Issue is, my mother saw this episode, and she didn't like what was on display, so no more Sergeant Frog for me. In the years since, the original hypervigilance around anime that I had has transformed into a critical view of sex and narratives. If it doesn't serve the story, I don't really want to see it. Phase sexuality makes sense for the genre. Beastar's horniness fits in fantastically with its themes and metaphors, and puts this direct link between sex and danger that means any scenes of traditional fan service are instead scenes where I'm sweating bullets. But that's me. If you like your anime hot and sweaty, you do you. You could think of fan service as a faucet. We have anime that drip fan service every now and then, and anime where it's a powerful stream. Animes where the fan service is kind of the point of the whole thing has another genre tag. Ecchi, or hentai if you push into the red zone. Dress Up is also an ecchi anime, so this stuff runs through the entire show. Even in episodes where there's no simple way to show some skin, they'll find a way. And since this is an extremely contentious point, I will bring this up here. All of the characters from every anime I've mentioned are high schoolers, which is one of anime's most pervasive writing choices. It is very rare to see truly adult characters, even in seinen and josei. But a consequence of this genre standard is that these characters are children, meaning Marin, Chika, Ino, Komi, Kaguya, all of these are sexualized minors. And for this, I won't mince words, this sucks. Anime and manga are cultural products, with a vast and chaotic media machine dedicated to keeping the thing running month over month, which both informs and is informed by its greater culture. All that to say, it's systemic and will take effort to change. But unlike most things in my life, this is not an American cultural product, but a Japanese one, meaning if they want to change it, the Japanese people will have to make that effort themselves. I'm not a part of that process at all. What that means for us in the West is you either need to put in the time to avoid these shows, looking up information to see if it's right for you before you even start, or make peace with it in whatever way you can. Lex Torius' stance is to mentally age everyone up a bit in accordance with the story being told. For example, is Ryuko from Kill la Kill's story or demeanor in keeping with the 17-year-old? She's certainly dealing with bigger things than I was at that age. And in the anime context, there's a significant difference between a character who is a child and a child-coded character. I avoid that at all costs. Another decent metric to use is how often they're actually going to school. If the character spent a lot of time in school and are actually interacting with the school system, then they're probably meant to be kids. In Dress Up Darling's case, they quite literally start at school when they meet, and then pretty much every episode after this never involves school, but it's really just a measure for you to figure out, is this meant for adults or for kids? Like, nothing is set in stone. As for my own personal look on it, I tend to avoid fan service because most of it isn't plot important and is just meant to titillate me. But when I do see it in stuff I like, I make a judgment call based on if I think it's exploitative or not. I want the fan service to be in service of something greater, to fit the story and its themes, and also, again, to not be exploitative. To speak completely candidly, this is a nightmare topic to talk about because it is a monstrous iceberg that pervades the entire industry and everybody feels a certain way about it, with some people being very opposed and some people being annoyed that you would ever say that there's something wrong with it. And I angered someone saying any of this. So yeah, I hope you understand that I am human and I am trying I'm trying. For Dress Up, I knew loads of people loved this show, so I wanted to push through to the end and see what the fuss was about. It is at this point I'd like to get back to the topic. Is the fan service in Dress Up Darling good? Does it serve the plot or its characters for them to be acting this way? Not really. You could say it shows Marin's casualness about her presentation, or she's being flirtatious, and while that's definitely sometimes true, this messaging is muddled through her flippant behavior around social norms. See, there's this type of rom-com, typically boy-oriented, that has an extreme obsession with social norms. Oh no, what if people see us like this? Wouldn't they think that this is a date? Or in Gojo's case, there's some moral issue with us being in the situation. We can't have people seeing us like this. I don't know what to call this other than analysis paralysis rom-com, because a character's concern over image gets in the way of their direct happiness. It's like they're above themselves, watching themselves, thinking, what will everyone else think? In Dress Up's case, Gojo is the one usually aware of the implications of a situation, and Marin is just going with the flow. But here's the thing. Usually when Gojo lets his guard down and starts going at the flow himself, it is Marin who gets squeamish out of nowhere. The entirety of episode 2 demonstrates this dynamic. Gojo needs to measure Marin's body. Marin strips to her knickers. Gojo spends the entire episode freaking out about it. Marin is playful, forceful, annoyed. They really milk the scene for every joke it's worth. And when Gojo has been through so much sexual stress that he's just tired, he measures her leg, and now Marin cracks. And in that moment I was like, oh, maybe there's something to this, like she's got some thigh tattoo or something else down there, like maybe some character stuff about Marin that we'll learn later and she'll expand on. No, it's just her trading places with Gojo for a moment. As an autistic person, social rules don't come naturally to me. I had to learn how to be normal and how to fit in, and that took a long time for me to figure out. I say all this to point out that for someone who needs to keep the social rules metaphorically written down to understand them, all of this is frustrating. Guys and girls are made of the same Just be normal, damn it. Marin is so absolutely head over heels for this nervous wreck, and he likes her too, but because the show's focus is more titillation than romance, the true moments of romantic tension will be undercut by jokes to tease the audience. And that frustration is inherent to the ecchi genre. It's never going to go anywhere. It's just meant to sexually frustrate you. But that kind of runs counter to the goals of a romance. One of the central complaints about Komi is it's too slow, right? It barely gets around to the romantic aspect of the two leads. Well, Dress Up Darling's genre means it's holding the romantic tension above your head like a bait and switch. The romance is, in this instance, fused with the horny titillation, and that makes it a high to be undercut. And that's upsetting to me. The final episode of the season does a good job of illustrating this through an admittedly unfair comparison. Spoilers for the finale of Season 1 for both Kaguya and Dress Up Darling. There is a focus on fireworks in both instances, with both of our primary leads not having much experience with fireworks up close. In Kaguya's case, it's a huge ordeal for her to even make it there, and it takes a combined effort of all her friends and a bit of dumb luck for her to be within range of the fireworks at all. And when that moment finally hits and the lights and colors are flashing around her, she finds her eyes locked on Miyuki, and she can't look away. Contrast that with a similarly great moment for Gojo, standing directly underneath the fireworks, taking them in, smelling the smoke, hearing the cheers of the people, and understanding how awesome fireworks are when you really appreciate them. And realizing Marin did this. His life has expanded so much in the past year, thanks to her. He faces her, music swelling, and they lock eyes. And the music cuts as Marin reveals her blue tongue and Gojo panics as he is wont to do. These are both great moments, but where Kaguya decides to land on a romantic gesture, Dress Up Darling, not unlike the show as a whole, is afraid of romance, and decides to be safe and make it a joke. Scary being sincere, huh? Ultimately, I find my Dress Up Darling disappointing, because alongside the genuinely stellar art and animation, the passionate characters, and really cute moments, there's the fan service and rather flat romantic moments that are also there. As pervasive as the good is throughout, so are the parts I don't gel with. So, Dress Up's a 4 out of 7 for me. It's as much great as it was meh. But I encourage you to watch it and see if it's more your speed. If you have a stomach for ecchi, then I have no doubts you'll like this. As I said at the very beginning of this video, I'm a big fan of animation. And ever since I first watched Ouran in high school, I've been all about romances. But the reason why I'm telling y'all this in a video is because anime romances and dramas are some of the best places to see good storytelling blossom in this supergenre. Punch anime have the benefit of having loads of flashy fights and big set pieces that you can put lots of time into. Beautifully animated, but story-wise, it's hit or miss. You have some with some excellent writing and good fights, and some that are less so. Romance plots have less places to hide comparatively. You see, the idea is that these characters fall in love, right? Well, what does one fall in love with? Looks are a starter, sure, and they're nice, but what makes you stay with someone is that you like them, their personality, and you enjoy every day you have with them because you just are good friends, you mesh well. For a story, this means good character writing. Interesting characters and developments are mandatory for romances to work, and since there's no obvious punch-outs to put all your animation chops into, this leads to a story that needs to be more creative with how it spends its time and its artwork. This is why I love these, so if you somehow made it to the end here and don't understand why romance isn't specific, here's a reason. Love is fun, for boys, girls, or somewhere in between, and I hope you find something in these shows to enjoy as well. So yeah, that's the video. As I said, I'm a big fan of anime, but especially romance anime, and I would love to discuss these sorts of things with others. So yeah, thanks for watching. Do you have any other ideas of what makes a rom-com more masculine? Any great romance recommendations? Like what you see and would like to see more? Make sure to let me know in the comments. Hopefully this video does well enough that I can keep making videos about anime in the future, elsewise this sort of stuff will probably be for patrons only. Supporting me on Patreon allows me greater ability to make videos about stuff I like without having to worry about the video poo-pooing and worrying about finances. Money from the patrons is consistent in a way YouTube ad revenue is not, so if you like this and would like to contribute further, it is greatly appreciated. It is beyond kind to do so, and I thank everyone who considers it. So yeah, that's everything I needed to say. I thank you once again for watching the video, and for those who celebrate it, happy Valentine's Day.